religion without God, the personal God, might also be religion without any details. The sort of religion that I'm thinking about as a possibility, perhaps a new way of thinking about how religion might be done, does without any sort of details. It focuses instead on this more general idea of an ultimate divine reality. The personal God idea is one way of filling that out, but there are other ways. And there are plenty of ways, no doubt, that we haven't even thought of. We might use the more general idea, I call it ultimism, of an ultimate divine reality.
Why do you call it divine?
Well, that's just a way of connecting it to the notion of religion. An ultimate religious reality, I could say, instead. It's the most general notion. It's a framework notion within which we can understand various religious phenomena, including certain new ideas, certain new ways of being religious, which we might develop within that context. And so we might take that general idea, even if we've rejected all the details, including theistic ones, as a basis for moving forward into a new religious future.
Is there any progress you can make? It sounds like a nice idea, but it sounds like it's empty. There's nothing you can fill.
Precisely in its emptiness, there's a room for progress. Because we've got so used to a particular way of thinking about the divine. The traditional theistic idea of a personal God, all power, all knowledge, all goodness, creator of the universe. All right, the problem of evil, everybody gets going on one side or another. And that seems to be the only option that people think about.
Round and round.
Yeah, and so if you set that aside and you say, well, now, what else might there be? And if you've got a framework for thinking about this, which I've tried to provide in that concept of ultimism, now you have all kinds of new possibilities that may emerge. It may be that we'll have to work very, very hard over a very long period of time in order to even be able to see some of the ways in which that general idea could be filled out. Ways that might arise to energize us spiritually even long after theism, the idea of a personal God, has been left behind.
How can you even begin to make progress on that?
Well, by adopting an attitude that, biased as I am as a philosopher, I'm going to praise, an attitude of seeking understanding, loving understanding for its own sake, a kind of real intense drive to know the truth, whatever it may be. But for various reasons, you're pursuing that aim within this religious context. Now, within that framework, then, you're willing to accept any sort of result that's compatible with that framework. And you want to lay out all kinds of different possibilities and think about them carefully. I mean, think about how long we have spent analyzing, dissecting the traditional theistic idea. If we gave the same amount of time to not just existing ways of filling out, alternative ways of filling out that general idea, but to new ones that emerge if we properly apply our philosophical pursuit of the truth.
Why are you insisting on putting the adjective religious on this ultimism?
Well, you asked me about religion without God. And so
you could just
there needs to be some sort of...
doesn't exist. That there's an ultimism that has to do with the ultimate reality, the fundamental nature of physical law, or however you want. There are other ways to
sure. If you're just using the general notion, the very vague idea of an ultimate reality, that might even be consistent with scientific thinking, because you might be considering only what is metaphysically ultimate, what is ultimate in the nature of things, what provides perhaps the most fundamental explanation of everything else.
And therefore religion without God, if there is no theistic God, therefore religion is just a human institution that developed through the traditional evolutionary psychology mechanisms.
Sure, you might...
Anthropology, sociology explain the whole thing.
Yeah, you might make the step out of any kind of inquiring skepticism of the sort that I endorse into naturalism, which denies that there is anything more to the ultimate than what science may someday discover.
But you're not willing to make that move.
I'm not willing to make that move because I think the jury's still out in a really big way, because I think we're still, and this is really interesting, you can use the results of science to support this, we're still at a very, very early stage in the evolutionary process. So thinking about that, we might take a look at what sort of religion would be appropriate for an early stage of development. That's part of what gets me moving in the direction of this more general framework idea. I say, okay, at a very early stage of development, perhaps we shouldn't look for anything more than a very general conception of the sort that's provided.
How do you know we're at an early stage?
Because of the results of science in geology and in biology and astronomy.
All you can know from that is the past. You can't know the future.
Well, there are results that have implications for the future. We're talking not about what definitely will be, we're talking about what may be. Science today says that the Earth, our planet, may remain habitable for another billion years.
Or several billion, sure.
Maybe?
Sure.
So, I mean, a billion
Yeah,
is long enough.
I'll give you at
Is
least
long
a
enough.
billion.
And if you think about how long we have already been here doing this religion thing, perhaps optimistically, generously, you might say, what, 100,000 years?
Excellent.
200 at the very most. All right, well, take 200,000 years, put that next to a billion. Now you see why I say we're at an early stage of development. And so at this early stage of development, religion without God might in fact be the best way to go, religiously speaking.